Welcome to my video, 15 minutes in, now that I hit the record button. Okay. What have I done so far? I've talked a little bit about what I was doing, which is obviously making Tim's character, again, but this time in Rolemaster Unified. Rolemaster Unified has a nice order to what you need to do here on page 27 of the PDF. Think of the concept, which is race, culture, profession. So culture / background is back in the game. They call it culture, and then right here they have background. But I guess for them that's that whole part. Generate your character stats, select talents, purchase your skills, blah blah blah. Magent is the appropriate profession in Rolemaster Unified for the magey, thief, backstabby kind of person. Still high elf, same setting. Background, they have backgrounds listed in the book, so backgrounds that they kind of come with. Let's see, where is it again? There it is. It's after races. Table 3 cultures. But for your own setting, you'll want to tweak this and mess with it. I have tweaked it, but we didn't really look at this table yet anyways. It's just the list of cultures. And while I do have some specific to the setting, the urban elf is not particularly different, so I just left it as urban. Then I rolled the stats. I've already rolled the stats, which that's kind of annoying. But basically, 3 percentiles, right? 3 percentiles. You roll them. And I put down all 3 numbers. What was in this space was something like 36, right? It was lower than 46. So the temporary that went here was 46, and the potential was the 90, right? So what you see here is everywhere down the line that I've got a number missing. And that was the lowest number. You'll notice here, the lowest number was something below 87, but then the medium and highest number were both the same at 87. So that was the only stat that started off maxed. If you compare that with the Rolemaster 2 stat generation, a whole lot of the stats were maxed. I'm not going to say good or bad. I know which one I prefer. But you also don't get to raise every stat every level. So if you have a whole bunch of, you have a whole bunch of stats that don't start at max, but you're also not going to get them maxed. Not real quickly. Also by default in the setting is any number rolled lower than 11 is just re-rolled. I actually had an entire roll here. I think it was this line. I rolled +7, +3, and +9. So all 3 re-rolled. And then you get 2 swaps. So I had swapped like, let's see, it looks like I swapped empathy because it had a potential of 95, and I'm like, we don't want this guy being really empathetic. Swapped that with what was rolled in agility. And then Constitution and Strength were starting about the same, 45, 43, but one has a potential of 90, the other one has a potential of 65. So I thought, well, this guy's going to be kind of stab you in the back, trying to kill you kind of thing. I thought it might be good for his strength to be higher to get that first that first hit in there good. And then maybe he doesn't need the hit points for an extracted battle, right? So he's level 1. Then I did the bonuses, which the bonuses for stats were right here on page 42 of the ARMS character law book for Rolemaster Unified. You'll notice they're all low numbers. Lowest, there's nothing in here is double digits, and it's not in increments of 5. And my racial bonuses are the same. I went and looked it up, but the racial bonuses for this are the same. what I was about to get into was what's next. Well, rather than just listing things that people can do based on their race, Rolemaster Unified brings in the idea of talents. Oops, I don't. Oh, poop. Alright. So I'm going to copy this cell and move it over here. So, by birth, actually, night elves have in my setting they have night vision, which is by birth. Actually, it's not birth. That's not what I call it. I call it race. The idea of, and actually the book talks about this too. Like, birth things are just almost like being born with a destiny or a sign or an affliction or whatever. Like, it's particular to that character, not unique amongst everybody, but just particular. Whereas a racial background is a racial talent is obviously due because of your race. I think it's, I can't remember. I might be missing a little bit of information. That might be a ranked talent, slow healer. Like, is it slow or is it really slow? And this is also what they decide to do, by the way, with elves. They still have that racial self-discipline penalty, but they make them prodigies at stalking, which means they start off with a racial bonus for that. Now, these aren't necessarily in the book. Like, the book does have races, right? But, I mean, for me, that's the first thing I'll go and tweak. I don't do races by the book necessarily. So this is going to be completely dependent upon your setting. So they have efficient sleeper and heavy sleeper to replicate that idea that they kind of don't sleep, they kind of go into a trance, but it also gets so, and they need less sleep because of it, but they also are much harder to get out of it. They have natural leadership, they heal slower when they get damaged, and stride 1, which basically just means they've got longer legs, so they're going to get plus 2 feet to their stride. Stride is a little bit more obvious in Rolemaster Unified than in Rolemaster 2. They're both there, but we're not going to worry about going through that. Though that is obviously part of character creation. In both games, there's a question of, like, we're going to start with this assumption in the middle, your quickness is going to affect it, and your height's going to affect it. Though in Rolemaster Unified, you could also have a race that has the stride talent, either positively or negatively. For instance, the dwarfs have a negative stride bonus. They have short legs on top of having a short height and not a very good quickness. They end up going pretty slow. Like this elf with a quickness of 80, bonus of 7, and the fact that he's an elf, so he has stride 1. He's probably looking at already going like 29 feet per pace per round. Because remember, Rolemaster has pace modifications. Whereas a quick dwarf is going to go like 13 or something like that. So, at this point, you could also decide to purchase another talent. What pages are talents again? I think they're 42, actually. I just remembered. Yep, right there. Skills and talents. Oh, where are the actual talents? Oh, they're at 72. That's where they're at. Here they are. 70. Yeah, see, there's the birth talents. But the purchase of any talent is up to the discretion of the GM. Birth ones are... Oh, they do call them... They call them birth, or do they call them racial? Oh, whatever. I don't care. I put it as racial so that you know that it's from their race. But yeah, they've had it from birth, but that's because of their race, not because they're just weird. And this has changed in their development. For instance, I think they've pulled some of the things that were like I think they put adrenal defense in here in this edition, but they've pulled it back out as a skill again. But you could be a quick caster. You could get your power points back when you fail a spell. You could get extra hit points or weaker hit points or fatigue rolls, or you could basically increase the strength of your attacks or make particular attacks weaker. You could have an automatic talent to reload faster, stuff like that. So these are always, one, up to the approval of the GM, but two, an interesting thing that comes into play, not really a lot per se, but it's definitely in there and influences the game. It's just not something you have to think about like during play, is the GM will specify a power level to the game. And one of the things that power level suggestion is that it one of the things that setting a power level suggests is the maximum size development point value of a talent, right? So if you're playing in a high adventurous game, they do suggest that you limit, say, talents to 20 pointers and stuff like that. Because there's like, here's 25. The ability to be a hybrid caster without necessarily being a hybrid profession. If you're playing a really like a gritty level, you might only be able to get to 15, which would mean that, well, you can't buy a sense weakness. You would go through all of these and see what you thought would be interesting and what you would want for, and your GM has to approve it. This stuff is essentially the background options from Rolemaster 2 creation, except that there's not any interesting combinations, there's no extra items, there's no... I think there's something in here somewhere for having some kind of organizational relationship, I think. No, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, those are the combat ones. Yeah. So, they're just... If you come from Rolemaster 2 and you liked the background options, they're kind of lackluster. But anyways, this is also where you get the description of what your race can and cannot do. Okay? The next video, we're going to go into more about what your background does for you, your background culture. It gives you some starting stats, and we'll look into that and start picking out the stats or the skills that we thought would be interesting and setting those up and seeing how those even look different to begin with. Okay? All right. Later.